without necessarily having your crease there. So it's actually a pretty good tool to focus them a little bit more on their positioning.
Great, thanks. I actually have my own question. I know you talked at the end of your presentation about ending with a competitive game and whatnot. Have you ever started practice with a competitive game? I know sometimes, we talk to our team about not being ready when the puck drops, so creating those situations for our players, but does that hurt the goaltenders to start off with that?
No, not at all. I think that's a really good point, and I'm glad you brought it up because I forgot to mention it. No, I think starting practice with a game is great because at the end of the day, as a goalie, you might see a shot 10 seconds into a game, or a breakaway, or and this is part of goalie preparation. I always tell our goalies, like, when you get on the ice, you shouldn't need to sit there and stretch. That should be taken care of before you get on the ice for practice. So when you get on the ice, it should be find a shooter and track some pucks into your gloves. So that if you start with a small game, you've already seen, 15, 20 shots and feel warmed up and you've done your off-ice routine. So it's a good accountability piece for them because especially if you're taking some statistics and starting to track goalies through the small games and they're starting off and it's slow, that's a good way to address it and say, hey, look, your first periods have been slow to start and you've been slow to start in small games, and you can see it right here. So let's talk about what you're doing to prepare. So you're not getting out there and just hoping you're actually warmed up and ready to go. So yeah, I think starting with a small game is fantastic. Goalies want to feel controlled in their environments. As with any player, I think they want comfort. They want to know what to expect, but that's the beautiful game of hockey is as much as I talk about anticipating an IQ, you have to expect the unexpected. Your defenseman can kick a puck in on you and, there's a million different ways that pucks can change course or a screen can come through your area and you can't see the puck. So having those, that adversity and that difference and change in pace early on can help them adapt and kind of overcome when those types of things happen in games too.
Great, thank you. One last question before we wrap up. This question is from Sean Walsh. When do you tell your goalies who's starting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was going to address it, but I was excited for somebody to ask it. So I think, I would say my greatest piece of advice for that is be consistent in what you do so that they know at least when people are going to know, whether it's if they know on Friday morning about Friday night or Saturday morning about Saturday afternoon. We announce it as part of a lineup decision. So when you have players who are healthy scratches, they all find out at the same time as goalies. Generally, as a goalie, you kind of know. So barring like a special circumstance where we might tell our goalies what the plan might be, I would just say be consistent with it. So they do need time to prepare, but I wouldn't overthink it. And I also wouldn't handcuff yourself into a plan, especially when you have 2 games back to back, unless you're 100% sure that you're splitting goalies, for example, and early in the year and you're trying to see what's going to happen. You might want to see, how a goalie plays on Friday night. And give yourself an opportunity to play them again on Saturday. So I would say within reasonable time so that they can prepare, not right before a game. I would say probably the morning of. But that being said, especially on like a Saturday, you got to watch film back. You got to make some decisions and, you leave yourself a realistic window to make an informed choice. But I would say probably the morning of is more than enough time to prepare.
Great. Thank you, Tara. That was awesome. Again, I don't know if we have any follow-up questions, but we will let you know if those occur and send them along your way. I guess we have a couple minutes before we start the next set of presenters. Rick Bennett is going to be up next to introduce those presenters. So thank you for joining us. Thanks again, Tara, and have a great morning.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Currently employed at Union College. So whatever questions we miss at the end, you see his email. So please email Doc Wally at his email to answer, again, any questions that you want that are missed at the end. Doc Wally's a pretty humble guy, so he didn't want me sounding off about him. So we only have 40 minutes. So Doc Wally, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Coach. Folks, I appreciate you having me here today. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And Coach Connolly, really enjoyed your presentation just for the last 40 minutes or so. I was taking some notes. So lots of good stuff there. I really like the quote from the Inner Game of Tennis. So if anybody hasn't picked up that book, it's a really nice kind of sports psych mindset book. But anyways, I'm going to get back to kind of what I'm here to talk about today. And obviously with the title here, it's, the importance of your vision as a coach, the why, the what, and the how. And so, really what I kind of want to get at is when we start thinking about what you're doing as coaches, what our athletes are looking to do, ultimately we want our players, and what we're striving for is to really be able to show up, to compete, to be our best at the moments of tension, of pressure, of high consequence. And one of the things that I think can be helpful with that is for coaches and for players to have a clear vision. But I also know that that term can be a little bit confusing and conflating, and I'm going to get into that. So again, the why, the what, and the how. And when I think about, everybody that's on the call right now, what's clear is, we have a range of people and who are really driven. You're here to learn. You're taking notes. You're trying to get better at your craft. And for expertise in anything we do, there's really 3 areas that we can train. So we can train our craft. So right now, as you're diving into the coaching seminars and goaltending and offensive play and defensive play and special teams and all the different things we're doing, that's all pretty powerful stuff. We can train our bodies. And I'm not going to dive into that. And I know I might have got some laughs as I said that, but coaches, I think that's important as well, because that recovery and being able to have the energy that we need to be exceptional in our craft. But the third area that we can train is our mind. And the mind and being exceptional at our craft come together. And, so what we're really working on today is one small aspect, but I think an important aspect of how we put our attention in the right places so that we can best develop ourselves, be best available for our players, and really be exceptional at teaching the game and helping our players be exceptional at what they do. So I know that you all are pretty good at the X's and the O's. But what I want us to think about in this presentation and through today is how do we purposely engage in a way of being, in a way of connecting to our players? And can we be as purposeful in that as we are in designing practices and drills and special teams and our lineup? Is there an advantage to it? And I'm certainly going to argue that that's an important part of performance. As we go through this, I think, it's important for you to know a little bit about me and how I kind of believe this works. One of those things is that I don't believe in shortcuts, hacks, cheats to any part of the game. I don't think you can shortcut your way to playing well. I don't think there are shortcuts or, 3 mental toughness secrets or any of that stuff that, people often try to sell us. What I do believe and what I know is there are principles, there are skills, there are habits, there's ways of being that really are capacity builders for ourselves, for our players, for our programs. And one of those things that can be a capacity builder is having a very clear sense of how I want to be and how I engage with my players. So, I hope today in, this time frame of 30 to 40 minutes, that each of you can take out a nugget or two, get you thinking a little bit. Quite honestly, I'm hoping I make you a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit vulnerable, because I think that's the space in which we really grow as people and as coaches. So I'm going to kind of get going here. And any questions afterwards, my contact information is here on the screen. So I want you to feel free to jump in, at a later point, email me, reach out to me, not a problem whatsoever. So as I was preparing for this, I started to kind of go through my notes and presentations I've done before and, the books that are kind of lying around my office. And I was thinking about a vision. And as coaches, I think one of the things that happens is, we'll read something and it'll say, well, you have to have a personal philosophy. And then you'll hear the term vision. And then somebody else will throw out the term mission. And then all of a sudden you're looking at guiding principles and values and character. And, what are your strengths as a person, and using the strength finder and goals and actions and non-negotiable actions. And, all these terms start coming out here. Your compass, recently, your GPS, your lighthouse, your anchor, your process, your outcome, your dream goals, your long-term goals, your short-term goals. And then there's a book about burning your goals and throwing it all right away. And, what I want us to think about is that those terminology, those descriptions, they can seem really conflating, daunting, confusing. And depending on what you've read, depending on the podcast you've listened to, depending on, the consultant from my field that you work with, the YouTube videos, you can end up with, a range of information. Some stuff is just not accurate, not productive, not helpful. And I think it can be really a turnoff for coaches and players. You can get some partial information. And if you're lucky, you can really develop this clear, succinct path. But, my experience and what the research will tell us is exceptional performers, exceptional coaches, people of high performance really tend to continue to grow, to develop, and to find the nuggets of things that work, that are foundational regardless of the terminology. That there are certain things, and I'm going to use the term vision, but there are certain qualities and principles that we know work. We know help us be better at what we do, help us be better at how we engage, help our players be better. And that's really what we're looking to unpack today, is the principles of what work. And I want to share that with you. And then, as we keep going, how to use those most effectively. So when I really kind of dug into trying to unpack this structure, what I look for is, okay, so what are the threads that connect, right? So what are the common things that really, they run through, no matter you use the term goals, or you use the term mission, or it's your GPS, like the things that work, what's the common thread that connects all of the effective components? And, the first one, whether again, you're using the term vision or mission, the first thing is we tend to have this powerful, really inspiring, really aspirational image of what is possible. And I think that's an area where most of you that are on the call are probably very good at already. Like there's a real clear sense of, this is what we can do as a team and as a program. This is a place we can get to this season if everything is clicking on all cylinders. Maybe we have a little bit of luck, but this is what we're working towards. So a really good vision has that powerful, inspiring image of what is possible, what we could do. The second part that I think is really important, where we'll spend more time today, is that it gives us a clear set of guiding principles and values about how I'm going to be, how I'm going to treat others, how I'm going to treat my players, my colleagues, how I can do this as I pursue what is possible. And that's an area, not because people don't care. My experience is that coaches care, that we all do, but we have all of these demands on our time. And, aside from what we're just doing on the ice and the practice planning, the recruiting, and all the other administrative things we have to do, that sometimes that how I want to be doesn't really get explored, and we don't really dive into. But a good vision has that component. Because we have, an image of what's possible, and then we have how I want to be, it really sets us up for good, deliberate practice. And I know that you've all read and you've seen the science behind the importance of deliberate practice. And even as I was listening to Coach Connolly, that's one of the things that really jumped out was, as she was presenting, how deliberate her approach is on the ice, and that makes such a big difference. A good vision also sets us up for this consistent method, and I do mean this, a consistent method to openly, to honestly, to measure and evaluate progress. And it's really the sense of what's working, what isn't working. But what I don't have in here in the slide is it's done in a way that isn't demeaning, judgmental. It's just kind of open and honest. This is working because, this isn't working because, and it could be because you guys didn't prepare well this week, or it could be because as coaches, we didn't prepare you as well as we needed to. But it's this honest, consistent method that we can use. And it's a little bit different than just going through film. And we can answer questions on that as we get going. A good vision also gives us a really nice framework, right? Because if we know what we want to accomplish, it gives us a great framework to anticipate the obstacles that are going to come. And one of the things that I think is an advantage to high-level performers, coaches and players alike, is really anticipating what are the challenges going to be. You know, what might we face down the road here? What might we face this weekend? And if we have this clear plan of where we're trying to get to, we can anticipate the obstacles, and we can, in advance, have a plan for how we'll manage them. And a really good vision of what we're trying to accomplish, and again, how we want to be, gives us something to stick with when it gets really hard. And we all know it will get really hard. It's hard right now, you know, as we're trying to help our players navigate what's going on. It's a hard time. So this vision has these various things that run through it, but those are really the essential components. And, you know, if you look at those components that I just outlined, they work because they feed the motivators and the drivers of high performing athletes and coaches, right? So they give you a clear path for some things that we know drive us. So as you're looking at this list and you're listening to me, just kind of think about your own experience about when you're at your best, and, you know, what you're really looking for as you coach and as you're part of this. And when we look at high performers, we know that purpose, something that's bigger than me, that's what feeds passion and perseverance. And if you didn't pick up on that passion and perseverance, that's grit, right? So you have to have a really clear purpose, and it has to be bigger than me if I really want to be gritty. Well, a good vision helps feed that. Connection is a driver for high-level performers. It's for our teams, for our players, and for most of us, right? It's this belonging to a group. It's belonging to something that's important. It's really having these relationships, and those are drivers for most high-level performers. Mastery. Well, mastery, we're really talking about, you know, a path to improve and become exceptional at my craft. There's not one of the players that you have on your team that doesn't want to be exceptional. They might wander off along the way. They might not think it's possible, but when they come to you, they want to be exceptional. And the fact that you're on this call right now is saying that you also want to be exceptional. We all want to be really good. And here's the thing, for, you know, what you do and what I do, we don't have jobs where we punch the clock and it's, you know, an 8-hour day. You know, we're putting in long hours and we're available all the time. And we do that because we're driving for that mastery, to be really good. Well, a vision also gives a sense of efficacy. This expectancy, right? If I have a clear sense of where I want to go, how I want to be as I'm going after it, it gives me this, hey, I can really make this happen. Like, here's the path. Without that level of vision, that connection, we're hoping, and that sometimes people feel like, well, I don't know, I might be putting in all this time and effort and it may not work out, which it might not. Autonomy and control, right? High-level performers, both coaches and players, we want to have control over our ability to influence the environment. We want to know that we have influence over our process, our development, our path, and a vision gives us that. It gives us something to connect to. I can get better if I keep doing these things. I have the power to make these changes. Authenticity and vulnerability. For me, these are two things that I don't think we talk about enough in our game. How important it is to be authentic and really to model vulnerability. And this is something that this could be a whole other talk. But if we want our players to really be accountable to you, accountable to their teammates, hold others accountable, it's a pretty scary thing. And it means that they have to be vulnerable. And if we don't have a way of training that, connecting to that, practicing that, it really gets in the way of trusting ourselves and trusting others. And so a good vision sets us up to be more authentic, more vulnerable. And the reality is, I think for most of you, if you really take a deep dive into this, you're probably at your very best as coaches when you are authentic, when you're When your values and your thoughts and your words and your actions align, you're probably at your very best. And a good vision gives you a nice internal organization. And what I'm really talking about with that is the way that we think. We think about what we're trying to accomplish, how we want to be. It really it gives us a good sense of our guiding principles. And then that can shape how we interact with our team. So hopefully you're getting a sense of that what. And, all of that supports what the science and the research tells us. So I want you to think a little bit about your team and the culture. So we hear about culture all the time. And the thing about culture is it's the artifact of relationships. That's really what it is. And what the science and the research tells us about culture, again, think of what we just said with vision and those qualities. In a strong culture, right, we want to belong to something special. We want to feel connected. We want to feel appreciated. We want to feel valued. And we want to be loved and to love others. We want to have strong relationships. In a good culture, we want to be part of something special, purpose and meaning. We want positive relationships. We want to have good connections to our teammates, to our coaches, to our friends, to our families. And we do, right? In a good culture, we're driven for the sense of accountability. I'm accountable to my teammates and I'm accountable for them, right? And it's because of the shared purpose that we have that in place. That's what allows it to happen. The autonomy and the mastery. And then I'm going to steal from a college coach, because you're not going to see the wildly important goals in any of the literature. You are going to see goals. You are going to see, purposeful goals. But I love that term. And it's a college coach that I have a lot of respect for. And he's really said, our players want to have these wildly important goals. They can be championships. They can be more than championships. I like the idea of digging deeper there. I'm working with a college basketball program right now, and the message and the wildly important goal that they're sharing, the coaches, the players, their whole program really diving into is they want to do something that's never been done before. Do something that's never been done before. And that's part of the language every day, and how important that is. And for them, it's a high level program. They want to make it to that Final Four. Obviously, they want to win a national championship, but they want to achieve things that haven't been done before, and the culture is setting it up. But the culture is emanating and coming from the vision of the coach. And I would say that in a good culture, people want to be better for their teammates, for the people around them. And they want to do that because those relationships matter. So we have that in culture. What we also know in terms of the science of really high performers is that the players and coaches, right? Because you guys are performing too. You're on the stage at game time. I know that, you know that. You have to make decisions that are important, that are in the heat of the moment. We want the capacity to show up, to be our best in the moments that challenge us the most, and that they have real consequences, like it matters. And that's why we do this. We get that kick, that jump. It really matters. A part of this is we want to be able to control our internal experience and our actions, no matter what's going on in the external world. And quite often, if you're working with a sports psych person, that's what you're looking for. If you really boil it down, you're trying to have players be able to control the way they're thinking, the way they're talking to themselves, what's going on in their physiology, so that they can trust themselves to go out there and play in the moment. The same with us as coaches. We want the confidence and the ability to adjust, to adapt, to execute, no matter what's going on. We want the courage to be vulnerable and really trust ourselves. And that vulnerability is important. So when I talk with teams and with players, I'll sometimes talk about there's a mental edge. And the mental edge, and depending on the terminology again, is often just, can I focus on the right things at the right time? Well, that's good. That's valuable. And it's important. The emotional edge is this spot between I'm feeling really vulnerable, right? It may not work out. And do I have the courage to take the risk and to go for it anyways? Or am I going to play safe and retreat? And playing safe and retreat never wins. It's never a championship culture, right? So our players want that ability to go all in, take the risk, as do you. And we want to be fully engaged in the moment. Now, I'm sharing all that with you because a good vision sets the stage for that. right? The other thing that it does is it's affecting culture is it really impacts what we know to be an important model for understanding what a high performance culture looks like. So if you think in terms of in any team, anything that you're doing, right, there's this challenge and support continuum. So you can have low challenge, high challenge. You can have low support, high support. And it's a nice way to think about a culture in your team. It's a simplified way, but it's also really backed by the research. So what we know is a low challenge, a high support environment feels really comfortable, right? It's really a good club team. You feel good. You're probably not going to excel. You're just going to be kind of flat, but people might enjoy it. Low challenge, low support, people get stagnant, they get bored, they disengage. High challenge and low support, that feels for a player like it's just unrelenting. I'm isolated, I'm lonely, I'm not cared for. This is when players start to point fingers at one another, they blame one another. Coaching staffs will do that as well. And there's this real fear of making a mistake or taking a risk because we don't know what'll happen. Am I gonna get sad? Am I gonna get pulled? A culture that's really successful has this high challenge, high support. High challenge, high support. It's a capacity builder, right? High challenge, low support is a capacity constrictor, where that high challenge, high support is capacity building. It's safe to make mistakes. I can take risks. I can look to challenge myself. I can seek out feedback. I can learn from my mistakes. It's more process focused. It's better development performance all the way around. But this high support is absolutely impossible unless the coaching staff has good, positive, person-centered relationships with their players. Now, you might be wondering, how does this all come back to vision? So as we start tying things in, again, vision, and what I want you to think about, there's what's possible, right? So it's, almost that outcome, what can we accomplish? But also, how do I want to be as I engage? So, right now, one of those questions that I hope is kind of bouncing around the back of your head is, do I engage in a way that's supportive? Do my players feel supported? And then we'll keep building, but let that question kind of bounce around. So another reason why we want to think about this vision is just be aware of who we're bringing into our programs. We've got Generation Z, you've all heard that term. And, with Generation Z, we're looking at players. Everybody's born after 96. Everything in their life has been digital. And, there's not a lot of research specific to sport on this, but the little bit that's out there, and the most current article that I thought was pretty good, is telling us that the challenges that we're dealing with in terms of the personnel and how we connect to them is that with Generation Z, there's a decreased attention span when compared to previous generations. There's a decreased sense of this personal responsibility, gratitude, like, coach, I'm just so glad you brought me here. That's not what it might have been a number of years ago. There's an increase in external drivers. So external drivers, if you're thinking about motivation, is, the rewards, the playing time, the recognition, some of the stats, where we know that really high-level performers are more internally driven. So they're coming to your doorsteps already driven externally, and we're trying to change that if we're trying to get them to be as good as they can be. There's an increased preoccupation in social media, cell phones. We all know that. We're all experiencing it. More involvement from parents, other advisors, and you guys are seeing that, right? And you're encountering that much more than I am. But I'd be lying to you if I said that I don't, on an occasion, get a call from an advisor or a parent, and they want to talk about what's going on in the program, which I won't do, but I do get those calls. And that with Generation Z, there's more of this short-term, outcome-focused goals versus a long-term process goals, which means it's harder to stick with it if I'm not getting the rewards. So that delayed gratification is something that doesn't necessarily come natural to the players coming into us now. And to be effective with Generation Z, what we're looking at is, hey, the research is telling us invest more time getting to know those athletes. Help them connect to their inner passions, which means you have to have those conversations with them. Help them to dive into the process and less about outcome. Well, if we're not talking with them, if we don't have a certain way of engaging with them, if we're not purposeful in that, that may or may not happen. More face-to-face conversations, right? So we're really trying to get them to invest in and really engage in developing trust, strong relationships, reducing the outside voice, and we're trying to build the people and the athletic skills. And to do that, we have to reach them where they're at, and that means connection. And connection is, it's certainly it's one of the critical drivers, if it's not the most critical driver in reaching out and making good things happen. So if you're kind of following along and this makes sense to you, what we look at here is, for you as a coach, your purpose, really clarifying your purpose, clarifying the purpose of your culture is going to be an accelerant to high performance. But it's going to start with you. You as the coach, you're going to impact every member of your program. What you're emphasizing, how your relationships are, the way you talk with your players, the way you reinforce things, the things you do reinforce and you don't reinforce, they're going to cause a ripple effect, right? And the culture, as I said at the beginning here, is really an artifact of the relationships that you're developing. So I know, because you guys are on this call, that you are all exceptional at really being deliberate and purposeful in what's possible. That part of your vision. Even if you haven't defined it, written it down, you have this idea of where do we want to be at the end of the season, and you're designing the structure for the way you're going to train your team with that in mind. And when you think about that, how much energy, how much time do you invest in practice planning, skill sessions, video work? And the numbers are staggering. And you should, because it's important. But the next question is, how purposeful and deliberate are we in the way that we engage with individuals on our team and people around our program? Do we plan that out as well? Do we really think about and spend time on, this is how I want to be with my players this week, how I want them to feel after a meeting with me, how connected they want to be with me and feel a part of it? And that's a hard question because we got so many things pulling us in so many different directions, and it's just the way it is. But what we've talked about up to now would say it's probably pretty important to be purposeful and deliberate in the way we engage. And if we want to be like true capacity builders for our players, and we really want to develop that high challenge, that high support environment, we have to be purposeful in both, what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, and all the ways we structure the environment in terms of skill development, tactical development, system development, game sense development, and also how we are and how we engage with our players when we're doing this. So some questions for you just to consider. All right, feel free to take a screenshot, jot these down, think about them. How do you fundamentally organize your life? Right, so your thoughts, your emotions towards your aims and your goals. Like, do you fundamentally have a way that you're trying to pull things together so when you go out today, when you make calls and you have Zoom calls with your team and your players, exactly how you want to come across and how you want them to feel? So not just the X's and O's. What's the biggest purpose of your life? And how does the way you coach align with that? So, and I can't tell you what the answers to these are because they have to be authentic and they have to be from you. But I think they're really important questions to think about. And what might it be like for the team? What would the impact be on our culture if I'm really purposeful and authentic in living my principles, the way I want to be with people? And I do that in a consistent manner, because we've all had these moments where, you're running into, and for me, I'm running to a workshop, I'm running to something, went late with a player, and you get there and you're feeling a little bit frazzled, and you jump in and you haven't really kind of grounded with how do I want to be and what do I want to accomplish. And as coaches, how much better would we be if we could ground with those things, but also, what's the impact on the players if they don't know what to expect from us? So that consistency is something that we can really look at here. A question that I didn't add to the presentation, but I think it's worth thinking about is, who's been the biggest impact in your life in terms of a coach? And what is it about him or her that was really impactful? And what do you remember about their way of being with you? Because sometimes that can kind of guide us. So, if you're trying to think about, and I'm not expecting you to have this all laid out, but if you're trying to think about this, some questions, and I'm hoping you're kind of jotting some things down here, and maybe taking a moment or two to really think about it. But what's my purpose for coaching? How do I define success as a coach? I'm not saying wins and losses are not important, because they are. But do I define it more broadly? How does personal development come into that? How do I want to be remembered by my players and my colleagues? Do my actions day in and day out match that? How do I want somebody to feel after they have a conversation with me? How do I want my players to feel before a practice? Do I want them to be so tight, nervous, and anxious that they're constricted? Or do I want them to feel like they can go after this, and then we're going to do an honest evaluation, and their mistakes are just part of getting better? How do I want somebody to feel when they leave a practice or a game, for that matter? How do I want them to remember me when they leave my care, when they graduate or they leave early to play pro or whatever it might be? How do I want them to remember me? And then, give some thought to when you're at your very best, and this is not something that's like a 5-minute exercise, but when you're at your very best, your most authentic, the very best version of you, what are the principles and the character values that are really guiding you? They're guiding your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your interactions. And I think if you can use these questions above, you can really drill down and get to, what are the core values of how I want to be as a person and as a coach? And this is really the element of getting to the importance of a vision. Let it guide the way you want to be. And then the next question, once you have that, is, do I purposefully try to make this happen each and every day? Do I evaluate at the end of the day? Because I know we're evaluating, what practices were like, right? Some of us are grading them, some of them are just kind of rating them, what worked, what didn't work, and we're being very purposeful in that. Are we using that same approach with how did I interact with my team? How did players feel when they left? Was I consistent? The way I wanted to be, was it consistent with my values? And I think it's a valuable question. So I know at the, as I said at the very first slide, I wanted to also have you be able to walk away with how to do this. So if you're going to be purposeful in this, I don't want you just to, I think I would be remiss. I wouldn't be helping you to my full capacity if I just said, think about those things and now you're done. You've got a vision. There's a lot of value in writing it down, getting it down to less than 25 words. I have mine down to 5 words. But one of the ways that you can really use this, so if you think that this is going to be important, not only the, what are we trying to accomplish, but how do I want to be so I can build those relationships, really engage, be purposeful in it. A great way to start this and to start the day, and I encourage you to try it. Takes about 4 or 5 weeks to make this a habit and just make it something that's part of what you're doing. But when you wake up in the morning, before you get out of bed, take 1 deep breath. Exhale slowly, and just think about and picture what you're grateful for. And I'm serious. It may be your family. It may be the opportunity to influence the young men and young women in your program. And then take a moment and picture how you want to be during the day. Not your to-do list. How do I want to be? How do I want to engage with my family? How do I want to engage with my team? How do I want to be? Put your feet on the floor and just kind of at that moment commit to it. It's a tremendous exercise. There's nothing that I would share with you here that I don't use. All right. And so just try to imagine what that would be like. How much more purposeful you'd be starting your day that way versus going right to your phone and checking your text messages. At the beginning of each week, take a few minutes, just like you're mapping out the way you want to practice, what the plans are for the week, and think about and write down how you're going to be, how intentional you're going to be in building your culture. If you're not purposeful in it, you're hoping it happens. Hope is not a very good strategy. Before you meet with a player, before you meet with a team, before you start a practice, use the same mindset exercise that we talked about doing in the morning. How do I want to be in the meeting? How do I want to be with this player? How do I want to engage? And at the end of the day, take a couple moments and just evaluate how well you did with it. If I was working with your players, I'd be asking them at the end of each day or the end of each practice at least, what was good? Why was it good? How was I good? What would I like to be better at? How am I going to do that? And what does it look like when I'm at my best? Well, we can do that same thing with our vision. How was I today in terms of the way I interacted with my players? And I think that this is really important. And, I'm stealing this from another sports psych person. She had shared it a couple weeks ago on a presentation, and she's just dead on and correct. It's the meeting after the meeting that counts. So our words, our actions, if they don't align, the players are going to know it. So if we're talking about family and we're here for you, but they don't feel it, they're going to discuss it and they're going to act accordingly, and it'll influence our culture. Folks, I hope that's helpful for you. Any questions, I'm certainly willing to take, and I know I'm right at kind of the edge of my timeline. So thank you, folks.
Doc Wally, thank you very much. That was an excellent job. We have time for one question, Doc, and this just in. Should our players create a version of a vision?
Yeah, and I think we should walk them through. And I think particularly in this time of COVID and with the uncertainty we have, it really gives them something that they can connect to in terms of a purpose. So I've been on a call, and a player, different sport, had learned that his team was not going to go this fall, and it's a senior. And the question that he threw out to the group was, now you're saying we're going to practice, but why should I bother practicing? And without a real clear vision or purpose. So if his vision, maybe, I don't know, but maybe if it, connected to, I want to be a great teammate. I want to be a supportive player. I want to mentor the people around me. He may in that moment be able to really kind of dig in and connect to, a deeper meaning where he would want to practice. Well, for our guys and for our women's teams and our women's players right now, I think they're in a position where there's a lot of uncertainty, and having a very clear vision, right, is going to set them up for how they want to train, what they want to accomplish, but also really gives them a place to connect to every day for how they want to be and why it's important to them. I think it's a valuable tool for everyone.
Thank you, Doc. We made it just to 11:30. Excellent. So again, thank you very much, Doc. That was excellent. And if anybody's willing to share, please reach out to Doc Wally at his email or phone number there, and I'm sure he'll share some information with you. Next meeting will be going at 11:40 with Pat Hirschweiler on offensive strategies. Thanks again, Doc. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it.